So, Kath, the other day, one of my jobs is being a chaplain in the women's prison, right? And so I had walked into the secure unit with my chappy buddy for the day and had some big conversations with the girls who came over to speak with us. And as I was walking out of the secure unit with the other chappie, I felt really, what's the word? Kind of inadequate. Do you know that
Yeah.
feeling when when you see something and you compare yourself to somebody else and you feel a bit inadequate?
Don't we all, Ellie, at some stage
And
know that feeling? Yeah.
I remember that feeling from I think a lot of my life. But then I thought over
Yeah.
the last, I don't know, 5 years or so, I'd sort of I've experienced it less and less. I think I
Yeah.
was really intentional over the years to stop comparing myself and
Yeah.
not getting into that headspace. But I walked out of this unit feeling inadequate because I'd been watching this chappie. So what happens is when you are early on in your chaplaincy journey, you're buddied up with somebody just to for confidence to learn how different people do things, and also it
Yeah.
is a bit of a not so much safety, but kind of a safety so that you can be in a space and you've got somebody else who's there with you, with the girls. And so, anyway, I walked out and I remember just saying to this other chaplain friend, you know what, I love the way that you speak with the girls, and I love that when you pray for them, all these Bible verses come to mind that you're able to share with the girls. You've got always got the right word to say. And when I said that, what I didn't really say, but what I felt was, I don't have the right words to say. So I had
Oh.
that feeling that she's a better chaplain than me.
Yeah.
And
Which
as
is
I'm
so,
saying this, it's so
yeah.
silly.
Well, it is and it's not also because I think, it's so real whenever you're in a situation of starting something new
Mm,
and you get partnered with like a mentor.
mm, mm.
And a mentor is somebody per definition who has been there before, done it before. They're more comfortable in that space
Yes,
and they can they've got something to teach you and
yes.
sort of to mentor you on and through so that you can become more skilled in that space. So it goes without saying that, when you're working with someone who is a mentor, that they will probably
Be
know more than
better.
you and have more experience and
Yes.
yeah.
But what was fascinating is, so I started to unpack this with her in a way that is kind of like, oh, I wish I could be better and wish I could be more like you kind of language is what
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
thinking and feeling at the time. But a prison officer came up behind us. So I was like, I'm not having this vulnerable conversation within earshot of the prison
Yes.
officers. So I stopped the conversation and we walked around to the next secure block. So we're in the secure part of the
Yes,
prison.
yeah.
Walk to the next one and into the next block we go. And we were sitting at this table and the girls just come up to speak with us. And
Sure.
one of the ladies came up and just sat at my end and we were just chatting and she was telling me her story, and it's a big story, right? All the
Yes.
girls have, I mean, you don't find yourself in prison without big stories. And so it
Yeah.
was a really big story and we were sharing, and I just sort of said to her, is it okay if I pray for you or pray with you? And she's like, I'd love that. So we sat and we prayed. And when we opened up our eyes, she had been crying. And then
Yeah.
she just looked at me. She said, "You have such a beautiful way with your words." She said, "What you've just said has really, touched my heart." And I just sat there and I was so blown away and I said to her,
Yeah.
I'm amazed that you've just said this to me, because as I walked in here, I was talking to my chappy friend, feeling like I need to be more like her. So we
Yeah.
had this great little chuckle and a laugh. And what I've realized, and I don't know, I've had to learn this lesson many, many, many times.
Yeah.
But it's not about comparing myself to somebody else. It's about me showing up as me, being available, being authentically me, because who I need to be is who I need to be in my world. It doesn't give me an excuse or a reason to never continue to grow and become better. Because, of course, we're not perfect. I want to learn and grow and get better every day. But comparing myself, that in that time, that stole my joy, it stole my
Yeah,
confidence. I was uncertain of myself, and I was looking at it as a you're better than me. And I
yeah,
know not
yeah,
to do that. But it was just fascinating. And I just thought, you know what, this is a little conversation I want to bring to you because I'm just like, Catherine will know the right questions to ask me here. Get me all
uh,
uncomfortable. But I just feel like it's something, particularly as women. I don't think it necessarily matters about our age or any of those things, but how easy it is to compare ourselves to other women.
oh, you're so spot on there with how easy it is to do it. And I think when I'm listening to you, what jumps out at me is that it is an intentional choice to not do that. I think the easiest is to default to doing that.
Mm,
And I think so often when we observe somebody, especially if somebody that has a gift or a skill in an area and they seem to be so uh oh, what's the word? They seem to just shine in that area.
mm,
It is, I think it stirs up a longing in us somehow to want more of what they've got.
mm.
I mean, I remember there was a book I read years ago, and I think the title was something like, I'll have what she's having.
Ah, that's a great title.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as women, we do this, I think naturally, often,
Mhm,
we look to other women, and it's funny how we often are drawn to seeing the the things that inspire us and stand out
mm,
and we kind of don't we see past the other
mhm.
sort of perhaps flaws or
Yeah,
faults of a person to what they're doing well. And it really is interesting how our default is to then go in and compare ourselves as less than.
yeah.
And the moment we get into that headspace of comparison, I think it's you know the dangers are twofold. It's either we go into that space of, oh, I'm less than, or potentially we go into the space of, oh, like look at me, I'm more than,
Yeah,
you know,
true.
and neither are helpful.
Mm-mm. It was not helpful to me the other day when this happened. It was helpful afterwards, and I had a really big fat chuckle about it because the amount of times I have found myself doing this exact same thing. Like instantly, what came to mind was the day of the ultra marathon when I started comparing myself to all the other athletes with their really, fancy shoes and their really great backpacks. And instead of going, wow, it'd be really cool to have, that sort of fancy backpack, it was, oh, they must be really awesome. I'm no good because I've only got a cheap, crummy one. Do you know, like I lessened
Yeah.
myself in the conversation with myself. But yeah. It gave me a laugh, and I realized I've still got some work to do in this space.
Join the club, join the club.
Yeah.
So the question I do have for you is, so you've noticed that this comes up on occasion,
Mm.
right? And so what do you think it is that, what's the kind of spark that triggers that for you? So in those moments when you feel it's like something happens and that shifts you into the space of you suddenly comparing yourself.
Mm. That I don't have
So
what it is. That I'm not, yeah. I feel I think the thought that initially comes is it's a lack of confidence and it's this idea that I don't have what it takes. Look, they do. And that's what it looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. And the beauty of that when I hear you say that is I think, well, that just shows me a person who puts themselves out there into those situations where, you don't always know what you're doing. And I think if I've learned anything about you over the
I
years,
never know what
you
I'm
know,
doing, yes.
no, no, you put your hand up for new stuff.
Yeah,
You're not
okay.
shy about putting your hand up to learn new things. I
Hmm.
mean, if you constantly lived in the space of I know exactly what I'm doing all the time, I've got
Hmm.
this, all the time, there's no growth in that space.
No, that's true. Hmm.
So putting your hand up for new things, and I know
Hmm.
this is a reasonably new role that you have in the prisons,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's only been a couple of months, and so it was a big deal to put your hand up and say, yes, you know what, I think there's something stirring on the inside of me where that
Hmm.
that gives me the will at least to put my hand up and go, yeah, I'm going to give this a go. And I think that in itself,
Hmm.
don't underestimate
True.
that takes courage in the first place.
Yeah.
And so putting yourself out there to go, you know what, even though I don't have all the answers and I don't quite know how yet, I'm going to give it a go anyway.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
and there's strength in that.
Hmm. I hadn't looked at it that way. See, I knew by talking to you, you'd show me a flip side or something else.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And
Yes.
similarly, if you, I always love in situations like this also to have a go at putting the shoe on the other foot.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of think, when last did you find yourself where you were sort of the expert in that area and you
Mm.
were mentoring someone either younger or less skilled
Mm.
or with less experience in the field,
Mm.
and you did have more knowledge and expertise
Mm.
and how that felt for you versus whoever you were mentoring.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because when I went back to the rehab the next week after that event had
Yeah,
happened, and we're at our morning meeting, and I thought I'm going to share this really vulnerable moment with the group because I really feel like I want to encourage everybody in at the rehab that
yeah,
it's important to show up as their authentic self because who they are is who they are, and it's important for the world, like for our community. And so
yes,
as I'm sharing this little story, I could see everyone's eyes on me because, especially for a lot of the girls in our group there that particular day, they're looking at me thinking, oh, Al's got it all together. And they're like,
yeah,
what? Even so, Al compares herself to everybody. And so it was a really great lesson because we are all, I mean, none of us have it all 100%. We don't all get it right every single day. We all have areas of our thinking that, we can challenge. And, but it was really great. I could just see all these little eyeballs looking, oh, what? Wow. Okay. So, yeah, I can see that. I
yeah.
can see that the lessons that I learn and then the lessons that we can then share with others. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing as you share also is, I think I often also have a tendency to shift into the gear of something being wrong or right, or,
Yes.
versus good or bad. And I
Yeah.
think for our listeners, we're not saying that it's wrong or it's bad to feel sometimes like you don't quite know and somebody else knows more. And, and
Mm,
I think the challenge is to, when does that observation flip into an unhelpful comparison
mm,
versus when is that observation kind of an invitation to lean in and to learn more and to grow. And I
mm,
think, if you find yourself in the space of feeling vulnerable when you don't know, I think that's a normal part of our wiring because
mm.
the neuroscience is that we're wired for safety.
Yeah.
And as humans, the unknown is often
Mm,
not a safe space. It's
yeah.
synonymous with not being safe.
Yeah.
And so I think it's pretty normal when you're in
Yeah.
unknown or new charted or uncharted territory to have a sense of feeling a bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's a flaw or a fault with feeling vulnerable. I
No.
think it's just when you
I've
feel that way, it's what you do with it.
and I think I've just realized it's not the feeling of being vulnerable. It's the real it's going, okay, vulnerable unknown doesn't equal
Yes.
inadequate. So in
Yes.
my mind, it went from I feel uncomfortable, like I don't really know, feeling vulnerable, and in my mind, that instantly equals inadequacy. And that's what I did. And I know it now. That's exactly what I've done. And so working out, okay, the next time I have that feeling of unknown and noticing, oh, I could do this better or different or whatever, there's growth. That's a great feeling. But how then do I go, that doesn't mean I'm inadequate. It just does literally mean I can grow, which is exciting, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just love that. And that just reminded me of one of my really early days in coaching. And it was a very similar to what you've just shared, but just slightly different languaging. So
Yeah,
you've just shared when you're vulnerable and something is new, your brain immediately went, oh, i-
inadequate.
i- inadequate. This equals
Mm,
that. And in my mind, it was back then, it was I had a coaching conversation that I'll never forget, and it was around if I'm not performing. I'm
mm,
not significant. So,
mm,
unless I perform, if I do perform well, I'm significant. And it's a little bit similar. Hey, it's like
mm,
if you're feeling like you can perform and you've got all the words to say and you've got all the verses at the tip of your tongue and you know exactly what to say, that equals you feeling
mm,
adequate. And adequate often leads us to feeling
mhm,
like significant. And
mm,
it's incredible, I think, how many of us tie our sense of worth
mm,
to achievement or to being adequate.
mm. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, just because we have got new skills to learn and we
Mm,
might not have enough adequacy, and
mm.
I'm saying enough in inverted commas here, doesn't mean that we're less than
No,
or we're insignificant.
not
And
at
yet it's
all.
so easy for our brain to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that I know that,
Yeah.
next time, next time when I'm
Yeah.
feeling, and I start to, how would we coach? Like, what does that look like then? Now that we're aware, because we always talk about that in coaching spaces about becoming aware. And once we're aware, so then
Yeah.
what do I do the next time round? Don't turn that back and
So
ask me because I don't know.
So I think, I think in a way, why awareness is so helpful. Like you've just become beautifully and with clarity. It's this clear
Mm,
awareness like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling vulnerable. I feel inadequate. It's to then the next step is to reframe.
that's right.
To switch that and sometimes the reframe is just different languaging.
Yeah.
So,
Mm,
rather than so if you were speaking to one of
somebody
your
else. Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So maybe one of those girls in the prison, or
Mm-hmm.
even to one of your own kids, or a
Mm-hmm.
good friend.
Mm-hmm.
And your friend was saying they feel so vulnerable,
Mm,
and that makes them feel inadequate. What else could, it's the what else. So if feeling vulnerable does not mean you're inadequate, what else could it mean?
mm. What else? Man, listeners can probably feel me squirming in my seat. Maybe they've got some ideas. If it
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm inadequate, what does it mean? It means that I have something to learn. It means I'm being real and authentic because yeah.
Yeah. And is so I know you said before, I mean you almost said it before, you said it means that you're in a space of growth.
Yeah,
You've got something to learn,
I
you're
do.
opening yourself up for growth.
Mm.
And so how does that feel?
It does feel exciting to me. It
Yeah,
feels scary, but
yeah,
it does feel exciting because that's what I want to do, right? I don't want to
yeah,
stay the same every day.
yeah.
So,
And so I
mm,
love that you just shared that it feels scary. So um I think we can all also somehow I think most of you listening as well might have experienced there's different kinds of sort of feeling scared.
yeah.
There's a fear, because again we're wired for safety. So how does that sort of so scary in a fear sense versus scary in an
Mm.
excitement
In an
sort of sense,
excited, unknown sense. Yeah.
are two different things. So I
They
think
are.
even just helping our brain to
Mm.
clearly recognize, because sometimes the feeling of fear feels similar in our
Yeah,
body. You know, when you're nervous, I don't know, for me, my gut just
it feels the same. Yeah.
yeah, tightens up. So it's even just the acknowledgement of, oh, right now I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling, scared. I might be feeling a bit inadequate, but I'm going to remind myself that this is
Mm.
okay because actually this is an exciting kind of unknown
Mm.
territory. And even just the reminding yourself
Yeah, that's
that
great.
it's okay to feel this way, but hey, you're opening yourself for growth, and even like tapping yourself on the shoulder and going, hey, Elle, remember this is exciting.
Yeah, no, that's good. Well, yeah, I agree. And I'm so glad that I decided to have this conversation with you today because I have literally had that light bulb moment of what I've been doing every time I compare myself and have that feeling. I've had that feeling equals inadequacy. Now that I know that,
Yeah.
even if I was slightly inadequate, that's not terrible. Let's work that out. Let's learn from that and let's grow and yeah.
And you know what's
Wow.
interesting? Yeah, what I'm hearing here is, and correct me if, I don't need to be right, but so what I'm hearing is when you've shifted into that, oh, I feel vulnerable, I feel
Mm,
inadequate, that feeling of inadequacy has you scrambling towards comparison.
every time. Mm,
But if you go in the different direction and you
mm,
go, oh, I'm feeling a bit vulnerable, this is a new territory, this is,
mm.
a door opening to grow. I'm not sure that you then default into comparison.
No, there's no reason to.
No.
Because I think the comparison was to just find the evidence to tell me I am inadequate, because that's where
Yeah.
my mind was going. And so the brain
Uh-huh.
automatically goes to look for the evidence. And so, how do you find the
Yeah.
evidence that you're inadequate? By comparing yourself to someone who's clearly been doing the job longer than you, or, a different athlete, or someone at the gym who's been clearly working out much longer. Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So when
In
you're in that space of growth, what evidence are you looking for then?
who I can learn from, what that
Yeah,
can look like, what I can do differently.
yeah,
And that's an exciting space because then you're looking to other people for wisdom and growth purpose, not comparing to prove that you're inadequate.
yeah.
It's still looking to other people or to what you can do, but there's a different reason that you're looking.
And it feels so different. Like your whole
Yeah.
state of being is so
Yeah.
different when you're looking to others for growth
Hmm.
versus comparison. And
Hmm.
then, like, then you don't have to try and be yourself in that space. You don't have to try and be authentic because you just
Hmm.
will be.
Yeah.
You
Agreed.
know, you're not trying to be like anybody else because you're not focused on that at all. You're just
No.
focusing on what you can learn
And what I
and
can
how
do.
you can, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure about all our listeners, but thank you, Kath, for an incredible coaching session. I've just
I'm so
unpacked the
glad,
last 40
but
odd years of my life of what I've been doing. That's great.
well, I'm so glad you brought that to the table because, so often when I'm working with people, the very thing they bring is often something that I've needed to hear for myself.
Mm,
So it's, and you're so right with this whole journey being a, we need things on repeat and it's a journey. And
mm.
just because got something, we've shifted a gear and got something right or did something
For a
differently
time.
once,
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that we're going to get it, change
Mm-mm.
it every time. So I think we do need practice. I think it does take
Yeah.
intentional reminders. So in keeping this to kind of a coaching like
Oh
conversation.
dear. I'm going to be so sorry.
No, but what is something that is going to be helpful for you moving
Mm,
forward to remember your light bulb?
my light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Mm. I think what I will do is I'm going to reframe and get the language reframed.
Mm,
I don't know what exactly it will be yet, but feeling vulnerable and what that equals. So
yeah.
instead of it saying equals inadequacy, which is what my mind's automatically doing, I think I need to come up with a new word of what it does mean. whether it's
Yeah.
growth or whatever that is. And I need to have it written because I need to
Yeah.
see it for a while so I can remember. So next time I have that moment, I've got the language straight away to change my focus. So I can look at what I
Love
need to look
that.
at. So I think that's what I'll do. I just need to play with the language. So it's kind of
I just
catchy
love
and will
that.
stick to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Elle, thank you for the
Oh
opportunity
dear.
to have this conversation.
Hmm.
And if you're listening, well, that's an insight, a window insight into how coaching
Coaching.
works
Mm.
and how incredibly insightful it is when you, as someone sitting in Ellie's shoes today,
Mm.
have your own realization of where your brain's
Mm.
been at and how you want to shift that. So thank you, Elle. That
No,
was
my
exciting.
pleasure. It's not where I thought I was going. I thought we were going to talk about comparing ourselves and da da da, but here we are. Excellent. Love it. Thank you, Kath. Thank you for letting me share my story. And I hope that it's encouraged our listeners today in whatever way, whether you recognize yourself in what I was sharing and it's been a light bulb moment for you, or you've gone, okay, I think I need to have a coaching conversation with Kath because she asks tricky questions that make, yeah,
Um,
anyway. So thank you, Kath. I think that's been really helpful for me today. So on that note, we might finish up. I think we're out of time.
yeah.
And as always, love talking to you, mate.
See you next week, Ellie.
All right, catch ya.